Hey, what's up? It's Pete Thorn. We're here at GuitCon in Germany. I'm here with Tom Quayle.
Howdy guys, how you doing?
And we're having a good time.
That's great.
And, I'm getting over my jet lag, slowly but surely.
I saw you sort of just dozing off yesterday.
Well,
it's a hard thing to deal with though.
Yeah, we did the roundtable discussion last night, and we're talking about the time they were talking about tremolos and timing the tremolos, and I just kind of
you needed it though. You needed it.
About 11 hours in crashed. We want to thank the nice folks at Thomann and Vox for lending us these little amps here that we brought. We're down in a little conference room here at the Warwick Framus factory, and they let us take these little amps down.
They sound really cool, actually.
They do. They're cool. Yeah. I've just got a couple questions for you. The other thing is that I want to talk a little about playing, do a little bit of playing, but there's a bunch of content that we just did for Tom's channel. Go to Tom's channel, and the link is down in the video description below, and you can go watch the whole discussion we had. It was really
talks about a lot of different things.
Yeah, very good. So go down and check out the other video for sure. That's in the links in the video description. So I just wanted to ask you, okay, number one, what's 3 easy things that anybody could do to kind of improve their playing, you think?
Okay, let me think of, right, so 3, right.
Yeah,
or one immediately.
It can be 1 or 2, but just a simple thing that somebody could sit down and practice, or something that when somebody's like, how can I, get better at,
Okay, so one of the things that people always talk about, and it's not just to me, they talk about this all the time, I'm sure you've come across this, is this idea of playing in boxes. Everybody gets stuck in a box. It's like a classic cliche thing. Right. And there is the number one. Oh, sorry. That's my fault.
Oh, that's okay.
Let me turn that on. I don't know what sounds you're gonna have. Okay.
The box.
The box. So the only thing I should say really quick is my box is gonna look. Why would I say this on camera? My box looks different to your box, Pete. Ignore that. But what I mean is, obviously, I've got this weird tuning. So that's the first thing, because I have a C and an F on the top 2 strings.
How about that? Brain fart, but yeah, Stanley Jordan didn't he?
Stanley Jordan was tuned that way, yeah, absolutely.
Was that the source of, not to get off in the weeds, but was that?
Yeah, immediately changing, so that's my fault, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yes, in a way, there was a couple of sources, so he was one of them.
Okay.
Because I was aware of him in like 1998, I think it was, so I was aware he did that, and then I had a guitar teacher who did it. So those 2 things were like a catalyst for one another. Okay. And so I changed, but before I changed and didn't understand the fretboard at all, so it was kind of a weird thing to do at the time, but then I learned the fretboard this way, so I can't actually play in standard tuning hardly at all. Okay. I can play that pentatonic box in standard tuning, so boxes are quite useful, but where I was going with this basically is, you think of that as a box and therefore you play inside that box. Okay. Now there's loads of different ways that you can get out of the boxes, but that scale, if we take that scale in particular, has a formula. So there's certain notes within that scale, and the formula is generic. So wherever you move it around, whatever key you're in, the formula stays the same. Okay. But the notes change. So if I was in G minor pentatonic, the notes are different to A minor pentatonic, but the formula stays the same. Okay. So the formula of an A minor pentatonic is 1. It's got a flat and 3, or a minor third, a 4th, a 5th, and a flat and 7th, and then a 1. So I've immediately started technical, but I'm going to bring it back. That's okay. Yeah. So if you've got the 1 and the flat 3, if you just take those 2 sounds, those 2 notes, they make a very distinct visual pattern on the fretboard. Sure. So you go from here to there. So that piece of information, if you know where A is on the fretboard, you can use that piece of information. It's always the same, it never changes. So 1 to flat 3. That's quite a useful piece of information, because that one piece of information, that 1 to flat 3, is relevant for all of these things. I'll probably miss some out. The minor pentatonic scale, the natural minor scale, the Phrygian scale, the Dorian scale, the melodic minor scale, the harmonic minor scale, all of these things contain a 1 and a flat 3. Okay. So, if you then learn another way of playing a 1 and a flat 3, so you can also do it this way. Right. Which is your classic. Which you played earlier on. This sound, or this shape, again, wherever you place an A, is the same. So now, if I can find A's on the fretboard, I can find 1 and flat 3 anywhere. Great. Because I can find A and I can see 2 ways of playing the flat 3. The great thing about that is, I can now find that all over the fretboard as opposed to just in a box, where previously I wasn't thinking about 1 and flat 3, I was just thinking about the box. So I wasn't choosing the notes that I was playing, I was just picking shapes from the box.
Right.
So if I just imagine if we take this a little stage further, which I'll do really quickly, if you could do the same thing with the 4 and the 5 and the flat 7, and you knew what they looked like as intervals on the fretboard from any given A or root note, you would no longer have to think about box shapes. Wherever you could find an A, I can see the 4, I can see the flat 3. From this A, I can see the 5, I can see the flat 7, I can see the flat 3. From this A, I can see the 4 here, I can see the 5 down here, because I know what these intervals look like, as opposed to this box.
Very interesting. So you're taking a small,
really small pieces of information.
Yeah,
as opposed to a big piece of information. This is really hard to manipulate. If you give that to a student, what they'll do is they'll improvise. Which is cool, that's vocabulary for guitar. You're supposed to play that stuff, don't not do that. But if you want to play something that's a little bit more kind of like moving around the fretboard, so if you had those kind of more intervallic lines. Something a bit more involved. So something a bit more involved than just. That's the classic pentatonic vocabulary.
Yeah.
If you know the intervals that are in that scale and you can find the root note, that's the only thing, you have to be able to find the root notes quickly.
I'll stop you for 1 second. A great way to do this is, and we did this, I remember at MI, I brought this up in a video yesterday. If you can picture the neck between the 12th fret and the first fret, practice finding, since we're talking about A, practice finding A on all the strings,
nice.
Okay, if you've never done this. So, okay, there's A there, A on the 5th string, A on the 4th string, A there, right? And you can even do this with a metronome. Set the metronome and see if you can start doing it in time and do it for every single note, all 12 notes, and you just want to, so if the metronome's clicking, you just find A's all over the neck and do that.
That's a great
Take G, take F sharp, take whatever, take and just pick a note and do that every day and in a month you will know the notes. You'll be able to see those root notes all over the neck. It does not take long.
And the cool thing about this is the only note, actually very similar to a box, the only note you have to think about as a note is the root note, because if you can find the root notes, you just have to think flat 3. You don't need to worry about the fact that this is a C. It's useful to know it's a C, obviously, but kind of in terms of improvising, it's better to know it's a flat 3 than a C, because that's generic. So the cool thing is, if I was then going to move to a different key, for instance, so let's say we had a groove that was like based around A minor or A minor 7, and then we're going to go down to F sharp.
Okay.
So that's a really classic kind of thumb thing. Exactly. If I was going to I'll play over in a second, but if I was going to visualize that, like if you're going to go from the classic way of doing it is to move that whole thing down.
Yeah, sure.
To F sharp. And if it's somewhere further away, like you're going to be phrasing here, then maybe you have to break that completely and move somewhere completely unrelated because you don't know the fretboard well enough.
Right.
But if all you have to do is go from this A, let's say we're here, and you can see the flat 3, the 4, the 5, and the flat 7 against that A.
Yep.
You just have to find F sharp, the nearest F sharp.
Okay, so if we're going like...
So I'm thinking from this F sharp now.
Okay.
Then I might move to this A. Now I'm thinking from this A, which is not an A for you, but it is for me because it's a weird tuning. So you also be at the 5th fret. Now maybe this A. Now I'm thinking from this F sharp.
Can we do something for a second? Where we just play, so if I play and you start in a position, you kind of do one round here, and then move up a little higher, and then move up a little higher. Let's try that for a second.
Okay.
awesome. So, okay, now let's break it down a little because you just played some amazing stuff. Let's break it down to what if you're a beginner with this concept and all you're thinking about is maybe root, flat third, and root and fourth, or something like that. And what would that sound like? So this is day one for practicing this concept.
First of all, don't try and phrase anything. Just like you'd have the rhythm, but just try and play root notes.
Okay.
That's all you would do.
So.
I'm doing a little bit of phrasing.
That's great. Yeah.
Now maybe if I include the flat three. So you can still bend into notes. That's F sharp. In order to sound really musical, because you don't need to be playing like you don't need that note density. You just need to play notes that sound good.
Do that one more time.
Anyway, if you've got a box like this, what you're doing is you're not making necessarily at first anyway. The sort of the beginner stage, you're not making conscious note choices. You're choosing things within the shape. Whereas the difference here is you're going, I'm going to play the flat 3 now. I'm going to play the 5, whatever, because you're choosing that. And eventually you'll learn what that note sounds like against the root note of the chord. So you can make it on 2 levels. You can choose it because you know it's the flat 3 visually, but also because you know what the flat 3 sounds like. And that's a more kind of, it's a deeper musical experience than just playing a shape and picking notes out of the shape because they're in the shape and they're near to where your finger is at the time.
That's so great. Okay, so my last question here is just, you've got such a huge vocabulary and like really impeccable chops as we just saw. And with so many players highly visible on YouTube and social media, so many great guitarists that we're becoming aware of all over the world, it can be overwhelming, I think, for guitarists like who want to expand their abilities but maybe don't know where to start. I mean, I know I've almost got attention deficit disorder where I see one thing and then I get, I want to work on that, I want to work on that. Where to start, like if you want to improve your abilities?
I guess what I wouldn't do is, let's say you want to learn, I don't know, alternate picking.
Okay.
I'm just thinking of something off the top of my head. It doesn't really matter what it is.
You want to get better at picking?
Yeah, picking just generally. If you type it into YouTube, because that's a really good source for learning, you're presented with this massive, overwhelming choice of things. It's like options paralysis. You click on one, you watch a bit of it, maybe it's not right, you watch another one, and you're spending more time actually trying to find the source of the tuition material than you're actually teaching yourself. In actual fact, there are correct ways of doing things technically, as far as if you went to MI, for instance, they would teach you the right way to hold the pick, they would teach you, the kind of sound that you should have, all of these rules, if you like. But actually, the application of just physically playing the guitar, if you look at someone like Pat Metheny, for instance, or Steve Morse, or Eddie Van Halen, or Greg Howe, none of these guys hold the pick the same way. They all have a completely unique way of approaching things. And if you actually, it's almost like the discipline of practice is not necessarily doing it for hours and hours and hours and hours on end. If you're going to do it, it's about having a focus, not skittishly going from one thing to the next.
Yeah, which can be the YouTube phenomenon.
That's the thing. So YouTube is like, because not only do you have the video that you've got, and you've got to find that in the first place, then you've got down the side 5,000 other videos that you could look at that are all quite eye-catching and entertaining and so on and so forth. And then the other thing these days, really, if you want to improve your guitar playing, turn your phone off, disconnect your Wi-Fi, all of the distractions that could possibly happen that we didn't have when we were when we were like practicing however many hours a day. The focus thing, like for me, if I take fretboard knowledge as a good example, seeing as that's what we were talking about previously, like I would just focus on one tiny aspect of it. And then the cool thing about that is that let's say with picking, I'll do stuff like, I'll just improvise whole notes, like one note per beat, just with upstrokes. Just I literally just do, like if you give me a chord, like a groove, like an A minor 7 or something.
Okay.
I will literally just do this kind of thing, like any groove like that. The thing is, that's one very specific thing to focus on. So I'm not worrying about my note choice. I'm picking notes, but I'm not worrying about that. I'm worrying about the consistency of this and worrying about is it in time. Yeah. So those two things, if you do that for long enough, what you know at the end of that practice session is you will be better at that very specific small thing.
Great.
So therefore, like if I was worrying about strictly alternate picking, up and down scales, and maybe at that point, because I'm practicing things that are too fast, for instance, I might find that my left hand's not keeping up, and therefore I'm worrying about that. I'm not worrying about this hand as much as I maybe should be. I'm trying to get down and up strokes down at the same time. There's so much going on in my brain that by the end of the practice session, I'm kind of just frustrated and I've not really got anywhere.
Okay.
Whereas if I take something much smaller, much more specific, by the end of that hour, I know I'm going to be better at it.
Yeah.
I've at least improved a very small amount of my playing, as opposed to focusing on too wide a picture and not really achieving anything.
Right.
It's quite hard to figure out what those specifics are, but given enough time and thought process, maybe write down all of the things that you could practice and then break them down into even smaller chunks and minutiae of technique, and work on that very small aspect. Just that one small aspect. It doesn't have to be the same thing every day, but just so long as the way to think of it is, what can I do that I know I will be slightly better at by the end of my practice session? So at least I've got always this positive climb going on.
That's great.
Or as much as possible. You will find dips as well, but try and have positive climb every time you practice if possible.
I can remember working on, like with students when I used to teach a lot. I was younger, I was like 17, 18, I had like 30 kids a week or whatever that would come in. And I can remember trying to teach this, just using this example, but like, let's take bending and vibrato, for instance, right? What I learned from teaching was that one of the most important things to your sound, your personal style, and sounding like a developed kind of guitar player is developing some vibrato and bending.
Absolutely.
In tune and being able to, so in other words, if we're going to take like a, simple like, and being able to, and kind of basically bend in tune. So spending time, like literally for an hour, just, you're going to bend a D to an E. And then, being able to hold it up there and give it a little bit of vibrato, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe, work on half steps, work on whole steps. And just try and develop that skill to get it to the point where it's like,
this is it.
And
like those are the things that give you the sheen. That's like they make you sound musical.
Yeah.
And not enough people work on those things. I mean, I'll break it down. Yeah. Like if you take vibrato for example, to get the control. Now nobody does vibrato that way.
Yeah, but you're
to get the control,
muscle control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in time, so it's very specific and it's a very small thing.
Right.
So up there we're doing 1 and 2 and 3, so 8th notes, and then maybe they go so 16th notes. And you're developing the control of doing it in time. It's something very specific you can practice.
Yeah.
And then when you've developed that control, you can control the speed of the vibrato. So if you want, or you want, the control is there to be able to do it. And then you would do the same thing with the third finger, maybe a week later maybe.
Yeah.
So having those very small things that you can work on. Because like I sometimes find you'll say to people, okay, work on your vibrato, and they'll just go around going, they'll work on everything at once, and it's such a controlled technique that requires, sometimes you'll do like even stuff like that,
that's an interesting
vibrato.
Or it's like
classical guitar, yeah.
Where you're actually
because for me that vibrato, like if I do that at the end of it's just the coolest sound for that legato thing.
Yeah.
But even working on that, like each finger in turn, like you were doing it there with different fingers. With the little finger, it feels completely. It's got way more control than the second finger. It's crazy how much pitch change you can get. It's just insane.
That's wild.
On a single fret, it's
different
really cool
sound.
vibrato.
Yeah.
going off on tangents again, but yeah, I can't help myself. But yeah, I mean, just
well, this is just a different. There's not a lot of people. This is a great thing that you brought this up because I mean, it's like this vibrato, right? That's not. I'm not pulling the. The camera's kind of far away, but I'm not pulling the string down at all. It's just you're literally sort of pulling it back, right?
But that
it's a different sound.
Exactly. That in of itself might take like a week's worth of practice just doing that, and that's cool. That's okay. You don't need to be practicing everything at once.
Now I remember having a student that came in, and literally like 1 week, like if you let's do that, like give me like an A minor for a second. You know, so maybe 1 week he came in, he was doing one of those, you know. Yeah, he had that sound going on, and then 1 week, you know, he really focused and he was working. Like a week later, and he's been working on it all week, and he's like.
Yes.
And I was like, you know. So you could bend in tune, give it a little vibrato, and I went, dude, it sounds like you've been playing 5 years longer than last week.
Exactly.
Like when you came in.
Exactly.
You know,
yeah, that's the key.
That's cool. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, that's great. So targeting information and really working on it, breaking it down to, you know, be it just practicing upstrokes, like you were on whole notes. That's great. You know, it's like strengthening your
things.
Yeah, that's really, really, really cool. Okay, well, this was terrific.
Cool.
Can't thank you enough for sitting down here and hanging out with me in the conference room at GuitCon.
My pleasure.
All the links and everything for Tom's, you know, video channel and everything, as I was saying earlier, are down in the video description below. We had a great talk earlier, so go down and check out that whole thing at his channel, please, and subscribe to his channel if you haven't already. Obviously, you should, because it's ridiculous on guitar. And we'll see you guys.
Cheers, guys. Bye.